This is Dateline News and Conversation. The topics tonight: there's something rotten in Denmark. What's up with the Scandinavians? Have they lost their minds? And then we're going to talk about what about the Europeans? Are they self destructing? Can they survive? And we'll probably at least make note of Russia as a peace threat. I'm very proud to have back on the show my friend. He's an author, he's an activist. He lives in Denmark. He's lived there for, God, I don't know, maybe 30 years. He's lived in Cuba. He's lived in Nicaragua. He's written and worked in both places. My good friend, Ron Ridenour. Ron, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Well, I'm really excited about the show tonight. I know you are too. You've been telling me, and I've been reading some things about Denmark, which is why I said the topic for one of the topics tonight is there's something rotten in Denmark. Now, that's from Shakespeare's Hamlet. So, can you tell me what is going on in Denmark?
Yeah, I can. I don't know if I want good news and then back up to the bad news, or start with the bad news and come up with the good news. But as I say that I'm uncertain, I think I'll begin with some of the bad news. But already you know that there's something really something that's beginning to throw the rot away, about to appear in this cold part of the world, cold temperament as well. Almost, I don't ever read anything, hardly ever, about how Scandinavia is just as much in the coalition of the willing as the bigger lands in Europe. But they are. And the prime minister here is a social democrat, Mette Frederiksen. She was a social democrat two times now. And the first time was when Trump was going to visit Denmark. And he just then, this is 2019, he said he wanted to buy Greenland. Well, the states minister here, the prime minister here, said to the news in Denmark that was an absurd idea. Well, this very big narcissist president, two times now in a row, not in a row, took offense, and so he canceled his visit. But they met in a NATO meeting in London, and they came out, and she said, the prime minister, we swing well together. Well, Trump in Denmark, Trump, the United States citizens are spending $410 per person for these 3.5 years of war in Ukraine. Denmark is spending $2,100 per person. And that's like 5 times as much. So per capita, of course, but I mean, no, that's absolute figures, right? Now, per capita, this bitch, I don't know. I mean, I'm a feminist, but I think, they're bastards and they're bitches. And she is a real war bitch, prime minister. And she is always bragging about how statistically, it's true that Denmark is number 1 in spending per capita on this war out of 57 countries that are paying for, Ukraine's dumb war there, where they've killed about 1 million of their friends, and then they've killed, how many other hundreds of thousands of Russians in this war, and they want to keep going. Well, that's going to change somewhat now, and I'm getting to that. Well, so, in the last few months, people are beginning to notice that there is this height of inflation of prices, that it's getting difficult for the poor families to even, eat meat anymore. And there's the biggest magazine in this country is what's called the seniors cause. They have 750,000 circulation, and there are only 6 million people. Well, they have statistics that show, that people in need, when you have people, you're old and you have to have care, that the care has decreased. I mean, just drastically. In these 3 years of war, 1 out of 3 people no longer get the help that they need, like taking a walk or having, the meals made. I don't want to get into all the statistics; it gets too boring. But the point is, there's a drastic loss of welfare. The overall statistic is 3% in these few years, but we're talking in like 23 billion, $4 billion, and that's a big part of the budget. So people are feeling it, see? Well, in September, there were some drones, they thought, circling around a military base in Denmark and around a civilian airport in the second largest town. And they circulated for about 4 hours. Now, the assumption was it was drones. And this prime minister always finds any excuse to say Russia did it, right? I mean, Russia jammed the political parties in this election. We just had an election I'm going to get to in November. And some of the political parties, including the Social Democrats, of which he is the leader, got their websites jammed. And then, of course, the Russians did it. The Russian government did it. They had no proof the Russian government did it. They just say it. So she says, well, we don't know for sure, but there's only one bad guy in the world, and that's Putin. Something to that effect. The Russian threat, the Putin Russian threat. And this is rhetorical, all the time. So for about a week, there was speculation about whether it was Russians or not. And the media was really, saying that some politicians were saying, and the media, one of the major papers said, why don't they shoot them down? The next time they come, shoot them down. You don't even know for sure, but you're going to shoot them down. Now, this is like, this is the old West that's still, in fact, Trump land and Biden land. It's the old West, you shoot first and maybe don't even ask questions afterwards, like what they're doing with the boats, the fisher boats, around Venezuela. Well, pretty soon, after a couple of weeks, then there was no more news. And it was never really pointed out in the media that it just faded away because there was no proof of anything. Then we've got, her inviting the coalition of the willing here. 26 heads of state were here at her palace gardens, and they made some declarations of more money, and we're going to win this war. This is in October, right? We're going to win this war. We, the Europeans, are going to win the war with Zelensky, our buddy. And then a Russian oil tanker, during this time that they were meeting, sailed close to the Danish, waters, in the international waters. Well, the French president was there, and when he, left the meetings, he went back and he ordered his navy to attack that vessel, that oil tanker from Russia, and they aborted it with soldiers, and they stole the boat, and they going to put the captain on trial. On trial for this, what's it called? Shuttling oil or something, some way or another. I mean, the capitalist world is you buy and sell oil and you get to sail from one port to another, but no, not that, that's no longer the case because of the French president said, we have to teach him a lesson. I'm not going to read my quote. You're just going to take my word for it. So then there were other, major things happened in October. And then the November elections happened. No, wait a minute. Yes, I have to say one more thing. The last time we spoke, Regis, I did mention that Denmark is the first country to invite a Ukrainian company and a war company to come to its soil in Denmark to make with Danish workers and Ukrainian workers to make rocket fuel for some sophisticated rockets that this company, whose name is 4 Points, has produced. One of them can go 850 kilometers away. That's well into Russia at a speed of 2,000 meters per second. And they're also the firm that makes these Tomahawks. No, Tomahawks, that's U.S. Flamenco. And they can go a couple thousand kilometers. Well, they're starting to build this. So they're going to build this factory right by one of the major air bases here that has F-35s and F-16s, and where the Yankees going to come. The Yankees going to come here soon, and soldiers, and they're going to have them there, among other places. All right, so that's announced. So now the two ministers meet with the citizens in this area. It's a very small area, and some of them are worried about security and what if this happens or that happens, and noise. They're always worried about noise. At any rate, they seem to get placated. Okay, elections in Denmark elections campaign is occurring when the other day, it got revealed. I mean, really revealed in the mass media, which is an indication that finally the mass media in Europe some of it is getting tired of Zelensky. Okay, some want Zelensky, some don't, etc. But these guys right next to Zelensky, these ministers, siphoned $100 million, they say, as a start. Well, the key guy behind it, his name is Timur Middik, and he's a good buddy of Zelensky. Well, he's charged with all kinds of things, bribery and confiscating money and so forth and so on. And so he fled to his motherland, his other motherland, Israel, where, of course, there are all kinds of people siphoning money. Well, this comes out, and it turns out that this guy is the mastermind behind this Ukrainian company that is now here starting. They're starting tomorrow to build this factory. And it won't take too much time to build a factory because they're really in a hurry to get this rocket fuel. Of course, they're still they're still with the thought that they're going to win the war. This bitch, she said it in October in a speech, and the television, she's always talking on the television, and she's very didactic and explicit about the evil of Russia, and how we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And, this is, children watch the news, and so what's happening now is the good news. The elections were the worst in the history of the Social Democratic Party. The worst ever. They have had the mayor's post in most of the major cities, and especially in Copenhagen. They've had the chief mayor, so they have like 6 mayors, but the overmayor has always been a Social Democrat. They Mette Frederikssen's, prime minister, her ratings from the beginning of the war were between 27 and 35%. The other day it was 17%. They're out of, they're out of chief posts in the towns and the major cities, and they weren't even invited to the other parties' meetings about You don't win by a majority here. You nobody gets a majority. I mean, nobody gets 50%. You know, you can be a prime minister here, and your party only got 20%. But when the parties are juggling with each other about who's going to take this, the Social Democrats weren't even invited to what they usually are invited to. So that's the good news. And just before the next question, I'm going to say what this newspaper says. The Christian Daily. I call it the Antichrist Christian Daily because it's run by 10 bishops, all of whom are gung-ho on murdering, Ukrainians and Russians. And they were gung-ho on murdering everybody that Denmark invaded with Yankees in the Middle East. They send priests, former priest, Regis. They send priests with a gun to protect them. They could shoot the people they're invading because they're there, to give alms. I mean, they're there to soothe the consciousness of the Danish troops. So they also have to have a gun, and they take practice. They do practice in Denmark before they're sent. They're called parish priests. They're sent, out. I mean, this is how sick and immoral this Scandinavia world is. I mean, they do this in Sweden too, but I got to concentrate on Denmark. So this Christian Daily, just 3 days ago, two days ago, has a headline critique. The drone communication has created free and wild theories. They're taking up what I just told you earlier about the September drone attacks, shooting them down, etc. And now they're criticizing this for frightening Danish people. They start with a staunch supporter of the war and a hater of Russia. And he says, I'm all with the war, but now this Danish interference in the war is too quick-tempered. It's like he's saying Mette is frightening us. Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister, is frightening us. The article points out that our skies, our airports, there's no proof of any drone interference, and yet she kept on. The newspaper quoted her by saying, even when there was no evidence that the even were drones, they haven't even come to that conclusion, she still said, it is primarily one land that constitutes a threat, Russia. That's what I couldn't remember before. And the paper ends by saying, it's a lack of information from the government. This has never happened when it comes to Ukraine. So, brother, former Yankees and now Russians, Regis and your two amigos, Peter and Richard, whom I like to listen to and get a real kick out of their humor. So I support your causes, and I wish I could join you.
Well, now you are joining me, but I don't want anybody else on the show that's going to take away from you and distract from that attention. Thank you very much for bringing us up to date on what's rotten in Denmark, but also the good news about what's changing. Now, I know that things are changing around the world. They're beginning to change in the EU. But before I get to the EU, I want to get to your close neighbors. Norway, Finland, Sweden. They've gone absolutely crazy. Their leaders are all in favor of the war. Their leaders will all say, as your prime minister will say, Putin bad, Russian bad, they're going to attack us. So we have to increase our military. We have to let as you say, the Yankee come in and create bases and set up their satellite stations and their missiles. Ron, these people have gone absolutely crazy. Anybody with common sense. And I don't know whether it's just the leaders that lack common sense or the people. I know I have some friends in Sweden, in Finland, and in Norway. They are peace activists. They're anti-war. They are they have been speaking out, but even more so now because of the insanity behind these people to prepare for war against a Russian attack. Now, I want to switch to the EU because, like your country, like Sweden, Finland, Norway, across the EU, they're committing $100 billion to go to Ukraine to continue the war. Ron, anybody who is clear-minded in thinking knows that this war in Ukraine is all but over, that Russia holds all the cards, and yet they continue to support Ukraine. Even in the last week to 10 days, as you pointed out earlier, the corruption that's been exposed. Zelensky's best friend, business advisor, and now this past week, Yermak, who was really maybe like a second president. He's the one who basically was Zelensky's right hand and left hand man, keeping him in power. And he's gone because he is being implicated. Ron, I have this question for you. When is the European Union and those members that are part of NATO, when are they going to say enough is enough? In your opinion, why do they continue with the beating of the drums of war against Russia? Why are they doing that, Ron?
Well, I'm no oracle, but I mean, I think, you know, there have to be a variety of factors. I think the first is that they've all either the same leaders or other leaders. You know, I mean, in these 3.5 years with the war, some of these countries have changed leaders, you know, or changed governments. But I mean, the Conservative Party in England, you know, and the so-called Labour Party in England are the same party, you know, and that's what I'm saying with Denmark. I mean, this is what's happened in well, all of Scandinavia, and is that you know, on the one hand, I mean, for the last several years, and also, you know, before this war, I mean, the major movement is going to the right. The left is not strong, you know, it's weaker than it has been. You know, so we want to go through a whole, but I mean, today the Social Democrats, and I like to say there's always to Bernie Sanders. I wish that son of a bitch could hear me. You know, the best country in the world, and the best government in the world was, you know, the Social Democrats in Denmark, and he called them socialist. Well, I mean, they are capitalist pigs and right wings. You know, they are as right wing as the Republican Party in the United States. Well, they're not with Trump. Okay, but that's another reason. Well, you know, many of these leaders still think, you know, that Trump will change, or he'll be shot, or he'll die, you know, and then another bin will come in. So they haven't given up totally on the United States. And so, you know, and as erratic as Trump is, you know, as you know, for one reason or another, he could decide to no, now I'm going to send Tomahawks, because you know, and in fact, that's still, you know, really a possibility. I mean, that's part of my answer, because, you know, President Putin and the Russian people, I just had a correspondence with somebody in Russia who, you know, we've had correspondence over some years, and we're talking exactly about what I'm saying now, is that There's no way in hell that President Putin and the Russian people, and 70-80% of them back him up all the time, and are going to accept either the 28 plan or neither the 19 plan. The 28 plan says 600,000 troops for Ukraine, plus without saying NATO, they will have security from Europe and the United States. So if you forget it. So so the war is going to go on for a while because have money to pour in. They're not stopping. For example, I've just told you about the factory that they're building. Stop the factory because of the expose that the mastermind behind the company in Ukraine is, one of the most corrupt. They're going to still, produce the rocket fuel, and there's, and then maybe they'll be directly involved. I mean, at this point, well, the Russian ambassador here has said this in this context with that rocket fuel. He said, now the Danish government is in the war against Russia. So, and they have been. The Polish, president said they were at war with Russia. So von Leyen, that fucking, German military, she was the military, she was the war bitch before, and now the war bitch again. So they've invested, their lives and their careers and all this money. It's like what they did with Afghanistan. They 20 years in Afghanistan. And when the Danish troops also came home with the Yankee troops, that people said, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, we were fighting the same enemy for 20 years and now they're there again, So I don't know
Ron,
if I answered that.
Yeah, no, listen, you've touched on a couple of things. Number one, their careers. For them to change direction now and to stop promoting war, which they have built their careers on, all of them risk going out of office, losing their power and losing their money, because all of them are making money out of all of this. There's no doubt about it. The second thing is, just like in America, there's no more industrial capacity. And because of Nord Stream 2 getting blown up, because of Trump sanctioning all of your countries, their economy now, like in America, is based on the war machine, the military companies.
Yeah.
And so I think, given the cracks that we're beginning to see, especially with Viktor Orban and a few others who are starting to expose the rest of them in the EU, I think it's only a matter of time before the EU crumbles. And there are two things, Ron, that I think are going to bring that about and bring about the collapse of the United States. Number one is going to be a catastrophic defeat in Ukraine, which is coming very soon. I think, as you know, it's going to be unconditional surrender, a complete defeat for NATO, the EU, and the United States. And Ron, the second thing that I see as very hopeful on the one hand, but very dangerous on the other. The rest of the world, being led by Russia and China and the BRICS nations, are accelerating their move to an alternative currency, an alternative to the IMF. I just read this article this week where they're accelerating the creation of their own currency. Ron, you and I both know what that means. It's the collapse of the dollar. And with the collapse of the dollar is going to come the collapse of the empire. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm sorry to have to say right away that I don't know what you read about that they've really put it on the agenda, the BRICS, because I would doubt that China would want that. Trump said that any country that does that, it's 100% tariffs or something. Of course we don't know what he'll do, but when he's threatening all of the BRIC countries, and that means Russia and China, with 100% tariffs and or no trade or something, or an invasion, for Christ's sakes. If he can invade a boat, somebody told me there's a fisher boat, the last one in Venezuela, with one person in it, and his brother said he was a fisherman, and one person in a small boat. I mean, Trump can do fucking anything. So that's the problem. And part of what I'm saying is everybody hasn't given up on that Trump could change his mind, or that there'll be a new president in the United States. That can also happen, another Biden. But I don't. If they do it, well, great. I just am weary about China and I have to say, even though we need China as a comrade, and I say this constructively as a constructive criticism, China caved in immediately when Trump said, no more, you can't import oil from Russia, those two companies. They said, okay. And then they reinstalled, I didn't even know that selling Trump, this crazy Trump, with two rare minerals that they use, that only China has, that they use for war weaponry and for satellites. I mean, that China should not be doing that, and that doesn't let me feel that their foreign policy can be relied upon.
Yeah. I think Russia and China, India, and a number of other countries are trying to balance between pissing off Trump in the United States and ensuring their own security, energy security.
Yeah.
Russia, just reading this, they got this new pipeline going through Siberia to Russia, that they're working like crazy to finish this. They're still selling oil to Russia, to China and India. Really? India, under tremendous pressure from the United States, needs cheap Russian oil, and they're not listening in spite of the threat of 100% tariffs. No. And Ron, to me, the BRICS, the global South, South America, Asia, don't really need the United States anymore. And I think what they're fighting for is their sovereignty and their independence. They're tired about what you've been fighting your entire life, about U.S. imperialism. And prior to that, Ron, European imperialism from England, to the Netherlands, France, Spain, Portugal.
Right.
It's been going on for 500-600 years.
Right.
And I think these people are fed up with that. Now, Ron, I don't know if you're paying much attention to the U.S. economy. 37, close to $38 trillion of national debt.
Yeah.
That is not talking about the personal debt of the majority of American people who are having to buy groceries with their credit cards.
Mm-mm.
And what major economists are beginning to say, and have been saying for some time, that the U.S. economy is on the verge of collapse. And with it goes the Western economy. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. I have been researching this, been talking about it with several friends, that what's happening in the United States today with rising inflation, People cannot afford their mortgages. They cannot afford food, basic necessities. Those that can are putting it on their credit card. And given the deep divisions in American society over everything from immigration to education to the infrastructure being in terrible disrepair, you name it, this country is divided. And I don't think that the United States has it in the gut anymore to come together as a united country to save themselves from what is about to happen. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a lot of thoughts and a lot of questions. The very last one I'll come to in a minute, but going back to what have you said, about the United States is, it's crumbling. I said, well, Europe is too. I mean, Europe is still, Europe has not given up the colonialist mentality. I mean, this, I'm going to keep on doing it. Obviously, I started it. This bitch, Mette Frederiksen, who was supposed to be some kind of fucking socialist, Oh, and one of her supporters is the so-called Socialist People's Party in this country, which they don't even know how to spell socialist, but it's their name, I mean, so, and she still hasn't really, freed the Groenland people. They've sent more materials, they've sent more weaponry, they're protecting it because they were afraid that Trump would buy it, somehow or another. So they're doing something more for Greenland or to protect the 50,000 people there from the bad Russians, So they justify sending more money there, because the bad Russians will eat up these 40,000 Groenlanders, So, I mean, but the colonial, and the British colonialism is even sicker, I think. It's the, it's the number one of the coalition of the willing. It's, the working class, unfortunately, I don't, I haven't followed England that much, and I don't know, but when Corbyn is kicked out of the Labour Party because he was an anti-Semite, a Jew hater, I mean, that's the most disgusting thing of the most disgusting things, etc. They have nothing to do with labor and socialism and social democracy. So, but they're dying out, and they want to take Russia with them. I mean, they wanted Russia for 300 years. And the United States has wanted it for 100 years. It was fucking another Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, that sent 13,000 Yankee troops in 1918 to stop the popular communist revolution, in which it started. Nobody was killed in the first 7 days until so. I mean, there's a long history that's not finished. I mean, it's dying out, Regis. But one of the problems I have with much of the left reporting is, and I remember the first few weeks of the SMO, back in February 22. I mean, I was watching people I respect, like Scott Ritter and Ray McGovern, saying it's going to be over in a few weeks, I mean, and yes, it's collapsing, but as I understand history, the Roman Empire, it took about 100 years for it to collapse. Now things go quicker today, with all the hybrid and digital shit. So it won't take maybe 100 years, but it could take 20, it could take 10. I mean, they still can invade, another country. They might want to really do Venezuela in, so that they can distract from Epson and whatever else, I mean, when in doubt, make a war.
Yeah. And when the economy is in danger, make a war.
Yeah.
They go on a complete war footing. And after the war, you know what? All of the debt disappears and somebody else has to finance it. Anyway, I want to continue talking a little bit about what's happening across Europe. It's pretty well known.
Excuse me. Let me. Well, it's Finland. You asked about the other Scandinavia. Finland's now talking about building a marsh. I mean, they have a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. And I don't know, maybe they're getting tired of having, thousands of soldiers up at the line. They're talking about building a marsh on their side to prevent Russia from invading. At the same time, of course, they couldn't invade, right? I mean, why are people so crazy? I mean, you demonize in this country, which was a free country. I mean, relatively speaking, when I came here, there was only one television station, and it was a wide spectrum of views. All the political parties, even the Communist Party, could come on. Today there's, I don't know, many television stations. The Communist Party is not coming on the television stations. I could come on the television stations also earlier I could write for the Danish media, or they won't take anything from me any longer. Everything is moved towards the whole. And you can say that this is an indication that the empire of US and Europe is collapsing, but it's taking time. It's taking time. It didn't begin collapsing with the SMO, 3 years ago. It began before that. They still say, economists say, that they never have recovered from the 2008 financial crisis. All right. So, we're 17 years into it.
Yeah. And, I'm not an economist, but I've been following what a lot of experts have been saying. And I'm not talking about the talking heads in the mainstream media, economic, financial experts. I'm talking about people around the globe. And what they're all saying is there's a collapse that's coming because people are realizing that what they're holding as assets is going to disappear. And I'm not an expert on this, but this is what I've been reading. There's a tremendous rush to purchase gold and silver. Russia, China, India, and other countries for the last year have been stockpiling gold as much and as fast as they can. People in the United States haven't woken up to that yet. More and more are. But the price of gold and silver has gone out of sight, and it's not going to stop. To me, and from what I've been reading, this is an indication that more and more people are not trusting fiat currency that America is based on. They just print more money. It's not based on anything. And I think the rest of the world has already woken up to that. And people are predicting, these experts, that because of this, something worse than 2008, that economic collapse, is about to hit. And there will not be anybody who can give these banks too big to fail something like $30 trillion, or I think maybe it was even more, maybe closer to $100 trillion to save them. So, Ron, I think on the one hand, what we see is some very positive signs. But on the other hand, and I always have to come back to this, will those powerful elite, call them elite, I think they're gangsters, who control the money, who control the economy, recognizing that they've lost this epic battle to control the world, do the unthinkable, the unspeakable, and take us all down with them in a nuclear Armageddon. Do you fear the possibility of this World War III, which I think we're in, could turn nuclear? We're going to end on that note.
No. God damn. Now I'm supposed to make some kind of prophetic remark about concluding the human race.
I don't want you to make anything prophetic. I just want you, do you fear, given all of this war rhetoric from everywhere, Trump about ready to invade Venezuela.
Yeah.
He told Venezuela, you don't have any more free airspace. The possibility of a war in the Middle East, the United States and Israel against Iran, the war that continues in Ukraine. Are we on the verge of nuclear war? Is that a danger? Do you see that as a danger?
Well, I certainly see that some figures, sometimes public, sometimes not, who have power. I mean, I don't remember their names, but in a couple of Yankees, high up, have said at conferences and stuff, things like, well, we're ready, fuck you, Russia, we're the big guy on the block. And if you want to play big time with nuclear weapons, well, we got a bigger dick than you have, or something like that. There are these idiots, and Trump is one of them, that's also very scary. Yeah.
You're killing me here. You're killing me.
Yeah. I mean, Biden, see, wouldn't do that because he really didn't run the government anyway, even before he was dement. But, but there would be forces that wouldn't want to do that. They would see the downside, But listen, the same fucking Republicans and Democrats and Pentagon and CIA leaders in 1962 with Kennedy and the missile crisis, they were ready to nuke the Soviet Union. That was the Soviet Union then, with 15 republics, all right? They were ready. So, and they killed the president because he wasn't ready, So, I mean, yeah. There are idiots like Trump, and then there are those that think, well, we'll push them first, of course, and since we have them already close to Russia here and there, we'll push them from the ships and we'll push them here and there all at once. And yeah, well, Russia will get some over us, but what the fuck, the people that are pushing the buttons, they're going to not get killed because, they're under wherever, I mean, they could have that mentality. So personally, I'm not, but I'm not the average person. I must say that I live so isolated, and I don't have a group of people around me or a political party that I wish I would have. And it's like, to me, it's like, it's going to end, one way or another. I don't see how the hell we're ever going to get enough people to really walk the, to do what we can, for my sake, we can end on. I'm an atheist, but I dearly appreciate and have loved several Catholic priests, and you're one of them, who have come over to us from this fucking fascist popes that they usually have. Maybe this one is not, but they've had a share of them. And this is the School of the Americas Watch co-founder, Father Roy Bourgeois, who says, it has always been about solidarity, to accompany and to make others struggle for justice and equality your struggle.
I'm glad you mentioned Father Ray Bourgeois. And of course, we'd have to mention the Berrigan brothers.
Yes.
Who, all Catholic priests, who all put their lives on the line against war, against militarism, against social inequality and injustice. And you don't have to be a believer in God to do that. I think you have to be a person who believes in the sanctity of human life, who believes in the unity of all men and women who live on this tiny blue dot floating out in the infinity of space, that if we're not careful, if we're not really careful now and vigilant, in fact, I will say, if we as a human species do not rise up and stop this madness, it could mean the end of the human experience on this planet. And I will end with this, and I end with this so often. My dear friend, Dr. Helen Caldicott, who played a major role in my 2016 film, 30 Seconds to Midnight, the final wake-up call, Doomsday. She said at the conclusion of that film, "Are we an evolutionary species defined in an evolutionary sense not to survive?" In other words, we now have the capability. We've been warring and killing each other for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, but now we have the weapon that could end all life on the planet.